We are back on Morning Line. John Harris is joining us with the Tennessee Firearms Association, talking about legislation here in the state of Tennessee with regard to gun ownership. Got you loud and clear, John, and we've got Taylor next on the horn with a question or comment for you. Taylor, good morning. Go ahead, Taylor.
Thanks, Nick,
Sure.
and thanks for your guest. I'm a little surprised at this bill. I generally don't approve of it, but as a gun owner myself, I care for a portion of it. What really bothers me is what is going to happen for all these folks that have never carried a gun, decided they're going to do so, and how the reaction is going to be from the law enforcement officials once you are stopped for speeding or running a stop sign, and they ask you if you've got a gun. You're going to, if you tell the truth, say yes. Well, at that point, you have got to be extremely careful to every move you make within that car, because that police officer is going to suspect the worst that might come of that. There's going to be such difference in how those kind of statements and situations are handled, simply because so many of these officers are not trained into what the law really is. So you could be totally innocent all the way, but wind up in a hassle of your gun being confiscated at that point, or a charge being made against you that you're going to have to spend time and money to get settled one way or another. And I just don't see the training institutions for these officers ever explaining it enough to keep from all kinds of hassles with totally innocent citizens being handled.
Okay, John, let's talk a little bit about this. And what Taylor's comment there, I think, is a good one. Makes me think about Kathleen, who called a bit ago, and she said she was African American, and if she's a woman who is wanting to have a gun and then end up in the situation that just John said, you would hope everything would go fine, but especially within the African American community and what Kathleen seems to perceive, I mean, I think she would be extraordinarily nervous and concerned if she was stopped, even if she's a legal gun owner, by a police officer based on some of the things that she personally has observed. And, I mean, I understand where that's coming from. Maybe that's outside the realm of the gun laws we're talking about, but maybe talk a little bit about Taylor's comment and what you recommend people do, be it Kathleen, who may have extra concerns because she's African American, and how you should handle it if you have a gun in your car when you're stopped by law enforcement.
Well, there's a couple of observations I think people need to keep in mind. First, we've had the permitting system since 1994. So for 27 years now, officers have been dealing with the fact that some citizens have been allowed to carry firearms. And at last count, the last number I saw, we have over 726,000 civilians who have the permits in Tennessee. The second thing to keep in mind is officers since July of 2014 have been dealing with the fact that citizens can transport any firearm, loaded or unloaded, in a personal vehicle. And that's the most likely interface where an officer, absent some kind of crime investigation, is going to come into contact with an armed citizen. So for the last 7 years, they've been dealing with that and have been getting training on that relationship. Mm-hmm. And we've actually had some law enforcement come to talk at the TFA's chapter meetings about how they're being trained to deal with an armed population. And for example, I'm not going to give my opinion. I'm going to give you the recommendation that we've had from officers who've come in based on their training. And these are Highway Patrol and local law enforcement have said the same thing. And that is, if you're in a vehicle and there's, you've legally got a weapon in there, rifle, whatever it is, and get pulled over for whatever reason, their advice is pretty common sense and straightforward. If it's at night, make sure you flip your interior lights on. Make sure you keep your hands up on the steering wheel or in an area where they can see your hands until they approach the car, and have your window open enough, not necessarily all the way down, but open enough that you can communicate with the officer. And then let them know, if you're comfortable that you're in a place where you can legally have the firearm, that there is a firearm in the vehicle. And those steps will immediately communicate to the officer that you are likely not a risk or a threat to them. And they'll tell you what they want you to do. Usually they're just going to want to see your license, registration, and insurance. But they'll tell you what to do. And the advice is, don't do anything to give them any reason at all to think that you're a threat to them. And if you're cooperative and open, they're going to be comfortable. You're going to be more comfortable. And that's the advice. And I think it's been good advice that the officers have actually shared when they've come into our meetings and talked with us as TFA members about how they're getting trained.
Good advice. And it is. You're right. Most of that is common sense. Let's go to Bart. Bart, good morning. Hi, Bart.
Hi, how you doing, sir?
Good. Go ahead.
Great discussions here. I am a concealed carry permit holder, have been for about 15 years, and I didn't even like it when they started granting concealed carry online with no training, hands-on training. I think it's a bad idea. And, we have a concealed carry here in the state, and I think that's great because even my law enforcement friends, when they're off duty and they don't have, a badge on and their vest on, they carry concealed because it's common sense. You don't want to be walking around with a big gun on your hip or a small gun. If somebody decides that they want something from you, they know they got to shoot you. So you lose your element of surprise. I just think it's a horrible idea, and I'm prayerful that the governor doesn't let it go any further. I can't believe it made it this far.
Okay, thank you for your call. I mean, John, what passes and what you're advocating, that doesn't mean that everyone is going to be carrying around their 6 guns for everyone to see. And by the way, I hear what he's saying. I used to think, and I've been places before where I've seen some individual walk in to a place where they could legally do so, and he had a gun right there on his hip. And I took notice of it, didn't have a problem of it, but it's not like you see that every day, you know what I mean? Most of the time, I know there's guns all around me, but they're concealed. And it's almost my line of thinking was, well, at least I know that guy's got a gun, meaning for better or worse, I know who to watch. Whereas with someone with concealed, you don't know. So you want to comment on that?
Yeah, we know from the last 27 years of experience that Tennessee has had an open or concealed carry law that entire time.
Yeah.
And the overwhelming number of people who choose to carry a weapon carry it concealed. It may be, in a purse, in a coat, in a briefcase, on their person in a holster, but tucked under a jacket or a vest, but they're carrying concealed. We have consistently fought, however, a concealment requirement because some states like Florida have had that, and then there were practical problems with people getting charged for having a, quote, concealed weapon that was visible because it imprinted, or when they pulled their jacket back to get their wallet, it was visible. And to eliminate the problems with defining what's concealed and incidental exposures, we have always fought a concealment requirement. Now, what that means is some people carry openly. And fortunately, we don't have a problem with people carrying openly in Tennessee being the ones committing the crimes. That's not that population segment.
Yeah, and then you don't see it all the time. You're absolutely right. Most people conceal. That was the one time I can think of that I've noticed it, one time ever. And again, I know many more guns are around me. I just don't see them. They're concealed. I guess, given my druthers, I'd rather know where they are. Let's go next to Linda. Linda, good morning. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Hey, go ahead.
Well, I feel like there should be stricter gun laws. You've got some people, not all gun owners, but some, when they have a gun in their hand, they become so bad, and especially if there's alcohol involved. I can just imagine there's going to be innocent bystanders shot because of this. And you have to have a license to drive a vehicle. Why don't you have to have a license for a gun?
Okay, John?
The difference between the vehicle and the firearm is the Second Amendment. There is no equivalency for the Second Amendment with respect to transportation vehicles. The concern about permits or not having permits and the increased threat goes back to what we said earlier, is that most states have already taken this step. Tennessee is not on the cutting edge, and the concerns that people are expressing about losing a permitting system or losing a training requirement or losing a state-mandated background check to be able to carry, other states have already gone down that path, and many have done it. Vermont did it 2 centuries ago, and the problems just don't arise that people are prophesying. Now, if you have people that prefer heavy gun regulation and prohibitions on people being able to carry and strict gun laws, fine, move to New York or Chicago or Detroit or California where they do have those things. Nothing keeps you here. But I think Tennessee's moving down a path like other states are of recognizing that this constitutional right means something, and that the prohibition phrase on state regulation in the Second Amendment means something. And although this bill that just passed last night falls far short of real constitutional carry, it at least is a step in that direction. Now, there's a lot more steps are going to have to be taken to get there, but it's a step in that direction.
And as far as her comment just about people drinking and gunplay, what is the law with regard to drinking and having the weapon or being in a bar with a weapon?
In Tennessee, there's a couple of issues. One is if you're in a restaurant or in a place that serves alcohol and you have a firearm, the law is clear. You cannot consume alcohol. We actually have what's called possession under the influence, which is a statute that says if you're in possession of a handgun, that you can't be under the influence of alcohol, even if you're in your own home. So Tennessee has laws on the books that address that issue. And if you look at the number of charges that arise across the state, it's just not a big issue. You're going to have people from time to time that get drunk and have guns. You may have people that get a little inebriated at a Sunday brunch and have the gun in their car driving home from church. But that doesn't mean they're a risk to the public. Other states like Arkansas actually have DUI standards where you can drink some and possess your gun. You just can't get so drunk and possess a gun that you couldn't legally drive.
Interesting. All right, let's go to James. James, good morning.
Yes, I have an open carry, and I disarm myself in several ways. If I'm going into a store, I take it off my side, put it in my fanny pack, a pocket, and just, I unload the weapon when I'm in the store. I do carry most of my weapons with a round chambered, but I take precautions. The weapons I own are not weapons that could likely be discharged by impact. They're what you call a lemon squeezer. You have to squeeze the trigger and the handle portion of the weapon at the same time. And when you're leaving your gun in your car, take the barrel off of it, disassemble it, make it unusable. You're saving so many people's lives by a simple act. That's it.
Yeah, let me ask you this, James. I'm just curious. I mean, I guess you could legally, if you chose to, still go in with that gun on your hip or wherever you have it. Why do you choose to conceal it when you go into some of these establishments? Is that because you don't want to make others feel uncomfortable in your perception, or why do you do that?
Combination of things. The store security, you're taking them away from what they're normally doing. I got one coming in. He's in this shirt. He's walking over on this side of the store. It's better to just take it off, unchambered around, stick it up in your pocket, stick it in your fanny pocket, pack, purse, whatever. But don't leave your weapon in your car. if you do, disassemble it. Don't make your weapon a choice for a burglar.
Yeah, John, you and I have done stories on this together, and you offer some great advice on it. And yet, you saw the Metro Police Chief just last week go on, one of those video releases where he was saying, folks, please. I mean, every 2 weeks, Metro PD, John, releases, and maybe it's every week, a report on how many cars have been stolen and broken into, and then the last couple of sentences are how many guns were stolen that had been left in vehicles. And it's in the hundreds now, and it's mind-boggling.
It is. And I'll say this. Some of the gun thefts from vehicles are, I think, connected with the fact that the legislature has not properly dealt with the growing trend that we're allowing citizens to carry guns because they have all these prohibited properties.
Yeah.
And if you're a gun owner and you go to a prohibited property and you can't go in it, maybe it's a school, without leaving your weapon in the vehicle, you either leave the gun at home that day or you leave it in the vehicle. And if you're going to leave it in the vehicle, I mean, what I do is I've got a metal safe, and a lot of people that I know do the same thing, that's in the vehicle, and my weapon goes in that metal safe. I don't disassemble it. I just invest it in a safe. And if someone steals the safe, they're going to have to go somewhere and beat it to death to get the gun out of it. But at least I've delayed them, if nothing else. Now, part of the thefts may be from people going to a location where they're required by law to disarm. I think the unfortunate fact is, from some of the data that I've seen, is too many of these thefts are from people who have a gun in their vehicle. Maybe it's in a purse or a briefcase or under the seat, and they drive home and they leave the gun in their vehicle at home.
Yeah.
And in particular, in the part of town that I frequent over in East Nashville and Inglewood, where they're increasingly just parking on the street, and it's so easy for these criminals to just walk down the sidewalk and lift the handle on every car they see to see if it's unlocked.
Yep. Again, this just comes down to it. I know it's a pet peeve of yours and mine in terms of just responsible gun ownership, and
You can't fix stupid.
Right. That's what it is. Secure your gun. Look, no one deserves to be a victim. It would be nice in a perfect world that you could leave your gun laying out on your unlocked car's passenger seat. But you know what? You can't. And if you do that, you're just stupid. Period. But I didn't, I didn't do a crime here. Yeah, in a way, it almost should be a crime, John, if you're that dumb. All right. But is there a crime against being stupid, John?
No, a lot of them get elected to Congress.
Yeah, sadly not. Hey, John Harris, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Always a good conversation. We'll talk again, all right?
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, my friend. All right, that's John Harris, Tennessee Firearms Association. He comes on periodically to talk about guns and gun laws here in the state of Tennessee, and, he definitely lays it out. You know where he's coming from in support of legislation and gun ownership and the like, but he tries to at least tell you how things are. We'll be back to wrap things up right after this.